Howdy everyone, and today I'm checking out another f/0.95 lens from China, the TTArtisan 50mm f/0.95. It's currently only available on Leica M mount, but it can be easily adapted onto Sony E mount cameras and other mirrorless camera systems. Just purchase the correct adapter. It's a full frame lens, it's manual focus only, and its price is $750 and it comes in black or silver. I'd like to thank TTArtisan for sending me a copy of this lens for testing, although as usual this is a totally independent review. We will be looking at its strengths and weaknesses together. Now, any f/0.95 lens on a full frame camera can get you incredible images. Just look at those out of focus backgrounds. They're a heck of a lot of fun to use, although focusing manually at such a bright aperture can be tricky. Forget about trying to focus on any moving subjects. Although this is an f/0.95 lens, something I do want to mention is that its light transmission doesn't seem to be that impressive. On the left here you can see a picture from the TTArtisan lens at f/0.95, and on the right one from a Sigma 50mm art lens at f1.4. As you can see, the TTArtisan lens offers a considerably more out of focus background, but judging by the shutter speeds, its light transmission is barely any brighter, so bear that in mind. Let's have a look at the build quality. In a word, it is gorgeous. It's a big hunk of metal that's very nicely designed and looks aesthetically pleasing. It has a nice balance and weight to it, weighing 660 grams or about 1.5 pounds. The main control point is a metallic manual focus ring. As I mentioned, this is a totally manual lens, manual focus, manual aperture. The focus ring turns very smoothly and evenly, but only about 100 degrees, so it can be a little fiddly sometimes to nail focus at f/0.95. Also, the metallic ridges on the ring can sometimes feel a little rough against your fingers. As you can see here, the lens does exhibit some focus breathing, but I've seen worse than this before. Above the focus ring we have the aperture ring, which turns with some lovely gentle clicks to it. It feels really nice to use. The lens doesn't come with a hood, unfortunately, but it does have a very good quality metallic lens cap, and its filter size is 67mm. Overall, well, these Chinese manual focus lenses, they do tend to have very nice build quality, and this is no exception. I do wish the focus ring had just a little more precision to it though, but it's still not too difficult to use. Alright, let's take a look at image quality. I'll start by adapting the lens onto a full frame camera, my Sony A7R III. There are no in-camera corrections available with this lens. At f/0.95 we see a few things going on in the middle of the image. We see a warm colour cast that will need correcting, some fairly low contrast, and some purple fringing on contrasting edges. But through all of that, we also see a good amount of detail being captured, which is really important. Let's take a look over in the image corners. They are very dark, as you can see, and there's a lot of ghosting, but if you don't look too far into the edges, there's still some sharpness to be seen. Let's top down to f1.4. The corners are still pretty dark, but we certainly see more sharpness now. The image is looking a little better than I expected. Back in the middle, we see excellent image quality, although there is still just a touch of purple fringing here. Stop down to f2 for perfection in the middle, and the corners are improving again, although just a little chromatic aberration is beginning to make itself felt now. We see gradual but only tiny improvements in image quality as you stop down to about f8, although just a little colour fringing is still visible. The lens stays this sharp down to f16, where the effects of diffraction are beginning to soften the image. Overall, the lens performed just a little better than I was expecting in my tests. There are a number of image quality problems when you shoot wide open at f/0.95, but they begin to go away quite quickly as you stop down the aperture, and the lens is capable of some really impressive sharpness at darker apertures. Alright, well, let's see how it performs on an APS-C camera now. In this case, my little 24MP Sony A5100. In the middle, I'm pleased to say that the lens continues to offer fairly good sharpness, although the warm colour tint is there, and the purple fringing from before is exaggerated by the more demanding sensor. The bad news is that corner image quality has nosedived downwards. That's not what you'd expect to see. Perhaps the lens has an uneven plane of focus that's disagreeable to the particular size of the APS-C sensor. Well, anyway, here's f1.4. The corners are brighter, but still very soft. Image quality back in the middle now looks very sharp though. At f2, the middle looks absolutely brilliant. The corners still poor. You have to stop down to f4 or f5.6 for good image quality in the corners, and stop down to f8 for the sharpest image quality possible. Overall though, I wouldn't buy this lens to use on an APS-C camera. It's best kept for full frame shooters. Okay, let's take a look at this lens's vignetting and distortion. Distortion only presents itself right in the corners of your images here, so straight lines in your pictures will at least remain straight. As we've seen already, your image corners will be very dark indeed. It takes a long time for those corners to brighten up. Here's the image at f1.4, f2.8, and it's only really at about f5.6 that most of the image frame is evenly illuminated, although the very edges still see some darkness, so you will probably want to correct that in editing. Now, this lens has a major flaw, and that is close-up image quality. It can only focus down to about 70 centimeters, which is a lot further than average for a 50mm optic, and my guess is that TTArtisan might have limited to that just because close-up image quality is so poor. At f0.95, as you can see, everything just melts into a mess of softness. At f1.4, we begin to see through the mist. At f2, the picture finally sharpens, and so, if you want to shoot close-up, definitely stop down. Now, let's see how the lens works against bright lights. Very poorly is the answer. Plenty of strong flaring is visible here. However, if you stop down to about f2, then the worst of the glaring is gone, but you are still left with a rather clear flaring pattern. While we are in the dark, let's take a look at coma levels. This could get interesting. At f0.95, coma smearing in the corners of your image is very strong. Stop down to f1.4 and it's greatly reduced, and at f2, it's gone. Let's zoom out and take a look at sunstars for a moment now. They begin to emerge at f4 and become more noticeable at f8 or so. Now let's take a look at the quality of this lens's bokeh. After all, that's what you're buying an f0.95 lens for, right? Generally, I'm super pleased with it. It's lovely and soft in nearly every situation, although very bright points of light have a slight onion pattern to their substructure. And finally, related to bokeh comes longitudinal chromatic aberration. At f0.95, in my usual test, it's hard to see any of that, or indeed anything else, due to that dreadful close-up image quality. At f1.4 and f2, the image begins to re-emerge, and we don't really see too much colour fringing on bokeh highlights here. Overall then, the TTArtisan 50mm f0.95 is a lens whose image quality is pretty complicated, as you'll have seen from all these tests, and I won't go back over every detail now. It is usable at f0.95, but you'll definitely want to take into account its limitations, and you'll definitely not want to get too close to your subject, and also don't use it on an APS-C camera. However, it's a much happier lens when you stop down the aperture to f1.4, or better, even darker. In fact, stop down, it's capable of some excellent image quality. So it is a lens with two faces, really, but if you can handle that, it'll undeniably be able to get some pretty unique images for you. Thanks for watching everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this review and found it helpful. If you have, then be sure to check out my Patreon page in the description below. There, supporters get all kinds of unique bonus content every month, and a warm fuzzy feeling inside for being so supportive and helping these reviews keep trucking on. See you later everyone.